Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to install Windows 10. Now, if you're not able to boot your disk, check out windowsrecoverydisk.com, which links you to my YouTube page, and from there you can see the BIOS guide for changing the boot order. That will allow you to boot from the DVD. In this case, that has already been configured on this machine. We had inserted the disk, and now we are loading the setup. Now, if you noticed on that previous screen, we had setup for 32-bit or setup for 64-bit. So you're going to need to make that decision based on what type of system you have and what your license might be for. So when we get to this screen, we're just going to go ahead and hit next. We're going to install now. And if you're doing a fresh install on a new hard drive, you're going to want to make sure that that drive is working and you're confident about it, because if you run into errors in the process, it's going to be hard to distinguish if you have faith in your hard drive. Now, hard drives can have different types of failures, and I'm not going to go too much into that, but some hard drives may seem like they still work, and they may have damaged areas of the hard drive, which prevents data from being retrieved or stored to those locations. And oftentimes that'll happen in your Windows system files, which keeps your computer from booting. So keep that in mind. If you do run into issues, consider trying a different hard drive. And in that case, it's always a good time to upgrade to an SSD if you have an older style drive. So on this screen, we're not going to enter a product key. If you have one, make sure you do. Now remember, with the product key, depending on whether your system's 32-bit or 64-bit, that product key and version of Windows and the bit, 32 or 64, are all paired together. So if your key is for, say, Windows 10 Home 32-bit, you can't use your 32-bit key to install a 64-bit. So make sure you're mindful of that and choose the appropriate one for your needs. So here I'm just going to go ahead and skip it. And now this is a master disk, which I can leave a link to in my description where you can get this from, where I purchased it. And this allows you to install any version of Windows 10. So whatever your license might be for, you can choose the exact same version and bit and go ahead and install that. Now, if you notice the architecture here, it says x64. This is a 64-bit. So the disk, when we were on that first screen, it timed out. It said make a choice, 32 or 64, and since I didn't make a choice, it made a choice based on my computer's capabilities, and it gave me 64-bit. Now, you may have a 64-bit computer that you can run 32-bit on, but again, it depends on what your license is for, because if you install the wrong version, you're going to be doing it over again because it's not going to accept your product key. So in this case, I'm just going to choose Windows 10 Pro. Now again, this is x64 architecture, which is 64-bit, x86, which you won't see here. If you booted up the 32-bit option and got here, you would see x86 in the architecture column, and that reflects 32-bit. So go ahead and install Windows 10 Pro. We're going to go ahead and accept the agreement. Click Next, and we want to do a custom install. Now, upgrades are okay if you want to upgrade from a previous version and keep all your files and stuff, but I can tell you from years of experience that doing that ultimately causes more problems. Your best option here is to choose custom, and you would want to make sure, if you had a list of partitions in here, provided you've recovered your data, which is a topic for another video, you can go ahead and delete those partitions. If you have data to recover from those partitions and you can't boot into Windows, stop this process right away, and you can check out my link in the description for data recovery software. You want to do that before you try to reinstall Windows, otherwise your files could very well be damaged to the point of not being able to recover them. Now, if you accidentally deleted a partition, send me a comment, because there is a way that you might be able to recover some of your files even though you did that, or you started the install, or even you completed the install. It's possible you could still retrieve data off that disk. So in this case, I don't have any partitions to delete because my drive's brand new and it's all unallocated space. So I can choose to hit Next and define partitions. Say I want to split it up into 3, have one for my data, one for the operating system, and one for temporary storage. I could do that here by clicking New and setting the values for whatever I wanted. So in this case, I'm just going to hit cancel because I want Windows to use the entire drive. So in that case, you don't have to make a partition. You just go ahead and hit next, and Windows is doing that for you. Now right now we're installing. This is going to take a little bit depending on how fast your computer is. So basically, let's talk about the next step. After this process completes, the computer's most likely going to restart a couple times. After it restarts, you just need to complete the installation. Okay? Once you're done with the installation, you're going to need to go and check whether or not you have the drivers for your system. Being that it's Windows 10, depending on your computer make and model, it's possible that you may have all your drivers already done for you. If not, what you want to do is you want to go to the manufacturer of your PC. So if it's Dell.com, or if it's Dell, go to Dell.com and find their support link and driver downloads area. And pretty much all the manufacturers are similar. You type in your computer make and model, and basically it will show you a list of drivers for a particular operating system. In this case we're doing 10, so you want to make sure you tell it you're using Windows 10, and it will retrieve a list of drivers that you can download and install. Now the problem with the Windows drivers are they tend to work, they're usually given to Windows, to Microsoft by the manufacturer of the PC. So they'll provide them the drivers, Windows does their certification, and it turns into a Windows update. So now when you go to do Windows update, you may get updates for the operating system, but you also may get hardware drivers that you're missing. Now it's okay to install those, and after this process, if you just want to kick off Windows update, which might I add runs automatically in Windows 10, for some people that's a problem, you can go ahead and run that, and then you can later check and see if you're missing any of your drivers. And in that case, you can go out to the PC Maker's website and download those. Now, my feeling about the Windows drivers are that they're the basic drivers to operate the hardware. For instance, if you have a GeForce Titan X video card, that video card has drivers that you can download from NVIDIA. Now, if you do a Windows update, it's pretty likely that you're going to find those drivers in Windows Update, but they may not be complete and they may not contain all the drivers to get the most out of your hardware. So your best bet, and this is pretty much always, is to go to the manufacturer. Now, you may have a laptop that may have specific hardware, like let's say it has a GeForce, some popular video card. In those situations, you would need to still go to Dell because they're the manufacturer, and they take the software from NVIDIA and they tweak it to work with their other hardware in that machine. So you'd want to go to them. You wouldn't want to go to NVIDIA in that case. So the manufacturer of the device, if you got your own system and it's custom and you have built it yourself, then you would go to, say, NVIDIA for a GeForce card. But if your machine was made by Dell and it has a GeForce card, your driver is going to be retrieved from Dell. Alright, so now we've done our first restart. It looks like Windows 10 is running. It's starting up for the first time. Now, if you need some other software that you might be missing, I know a lot of people get nervous about reinstalling the operating system because they're afraid they're not going to be able to get all the software they had. And you may be using some old software. Let's say, for instance, Office 2000 or Microsoft Office 2003, which I actually like a lot, and I still use it. There are limitations to that software nowadays, and there's way better, less expensive options for items that you can get to install and make the most out of today's technology. You know, Microsoft Office, old versions can still make a Word document and they can still calculate in Excel, but to be able to use some of the new sharing features and the new file formats and stuff like that, you're going to need a newer version of an office management software. So what I'll do is I'll post some links as far as my recommended Windows 10 installations, software installations that I think every computer should have. You need a basic video player, you need a decent web browser, unless you really like Internet Explorer, but I don't. Alright, here we go with another restart. So it looks to be probably about done. Now when we get in here, we'll just have to wrap up the installation. So it's asking me for my product key. I'm going to say do this later because I don't have a product key at the moment. And you can choose to use express settings if you want. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so now it wants us to create our username, and I'm not going to put a password in. I'm just going to hit next. So here we are, we're loading into the beginning of our Windows 10 startup, final part of the installation, and it assures us it won't take too long. So I think I've mentioned pretty much everything. Again, if you're having problems booting the disk, go back and look at my BIOS boot order configuration guide, and that should help you to access the BIOS. And basically all you need to do there is move the hard drive from the first boot device to the second boot device, and move the CD DVD drive to the first boot device. And what that does is when the computer starts up, it's going to check the DVD drive first, and it's going to say, oh, there's a disk in there, so let me see if they want to boot from that. In that case, the Windows disk will prompt you if you want to boot from the DVD. Otherwise, it'll go on and boot from the hard drive. Now, if you don't have a CD in the drive when you start up your computer, it'll go right into the hard drive. So there's no problem with making this change and leaving it that way, because it's not going to hurt anything. Then in the future, if you need to reinstall again or do anything like that, you just pop the disk in and you're good to go. So here we are at the Windows 10 desktop. So briefly, I'm just going to show you how you can check what drivers you have. So you'd want to go right click on the start button down there, and you're going to go to computer management right here, and in computer management you look under device manager. Now if you see, I'm missing a driver here, so there's drivers that I have to get. They'll have a yellow exclamation mark by them. So for the most part, most of my drivers are here, but this is what you'll want to look for. You'll come and see which ones, try to get an idea which ones they are, go out to the PC Maker's website and download those, install them, and then come back here and you can right click and scan for hardware changes. And what that will do is check if that driver's there and reinitialize some stuff, and then you'll find out if you're making progress. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, if you need any help, drop me a comment. I will have some suggested software app links in the description here, and again, if you need that BIOS video to configure your boot order, check out windowsrecoverydisc.com.